Warner joining me here right now on the Rich Eisen Show. All right, Kurt, the floor is going to be yours right here. I'm curious as to how prevalent an issue this is. A lot of people think that Brady's only doing what every quarterback in the National Football League is trying to do, is get the footballs the way they want it, and if it does skirt the rules, so be it.
Well, one of the things I always take offense to when situations like this come up is when people make the argument everyone does it. Because I don't believe everyone does it, from the standpoint of going outside the parameters of what the league rules are. Are there things that we have the ability to do? Well, yeah. I mean, they let you rub the balls down and try to get them how you want them. I remember when we used to get them, all I wanted was the film off of them. They have a kind of a sheen film on them. So we would just, since we were giving them that week, we were able to kind of mess with them that week. I would just practice with them for a couple days. Didn't really rub them down, didn't really do anything. When I actually went to the gloves, I didn't even care. Just give me a ball and let's play with it. I didn't even know that there was a certain PSI that, range. I didn't even know that. I thought it was just, hey, they're going to give me a ball and I'm going to go play with it. And, so to say that everybody does it and everybody tries to push the envelope of the rules or go beyond the rules to see if somebody catches it, I take offense to that because I don't think everyone does that. A lot of people do what the league allows you to do, having the balls for a couple days and, getting the surface of the ball as you like it. But there's obviously a reason why they have the PSIs where it is. I don't understand all of that. But I don't believe everyone does it when we're talking about, pushing the envelope or going outside the rules.
So, Kurt, you didn't have a guy in St. Louis or Arizona that you would be in constant contact with about rubbing the footballs down in a certain way and getting them prepared. Mooch would tell a story about Steve Young wanting his guys to just throw dirt on the footballs all week long. You didn't have that, basically?
Well, again, all I really wanted was when you pull the ball out of the box, there's just kind of a plastic coating on it that can be kind of slick. And so all I wanted was to get that coating off of it. I didn't want it rubbed down. I liked the nubs on the football. So like I said, most of the time it was just, hey, we're going to use them in practice and throw them around, maybe just throw them for warm-ups just to get that off, to get the grip. But no question, there's a bunch of guys around the league that do different things. I remember playing up at Minnesota one year, and I grabbed a hold of one of their footballs, and I mean, it almost felt like it had stickum on it. And if you compared the footballs we were using to what they were using, it was a completely different color. I mean, it was like 3 shades darker than our football was. So, I mean, different guys did different things. I heard about, throw them in the dryer and do different things with them. I never have heard anything about, the air pressure of a football. But yeah, a lot of guys have messed with just the surface of it to get the grip of the football the way they like it.
Kurt Warner joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. So, Kurt, I've been saying since the Wells report came out that the circumstantial evidence is awful and damning, but there is no hard evidence that Tom Brady told anybody to stick a needle in a football to get it to a certain level for him. And then people who hear that respond, well, certainly every quarterback would know that the way a football is prepared to his liking, would have to know what is going on to make sure that the football gets in the shape that he wants it to be, that Tom would have to have known. What do you think? Do you think Tom definitely knew what was going on here if something nefarious was going on?
Well, I mean, I think the thing is, just like I had mentioned, I could have told our equipment guys one time, the first game that I ever played, hey, I like that little coating off of the footballs. And I would never have had to say anything or do anything unless I got a football in a game or something that I didn't like and would have, readdressed the issue. So what exactly it means, I think that's the hard part of this report is, was it something you said, I know the rules and let's try to, get around the rules, do this after the officials had the balls or before the game? Again, like you said, it's so much circumstantial evidence. Do I believe that the quarterbacks know their footballs when they throw them? No question about it. But this is kind of the nature of, how he's liked his footballs from day one, and that's just kind of how they started the process way back when. To to know every time somebody, messes with a football or tries to get it to a certain PSI, I really don't know. I mean, like I said, I didn't really care that much. When it came game time, it was whatever ball they hand me, I'm going to throw. I'm going to play. But no question that quarterbacks, have issues with that. And some guys are messing with the balls all week long and every time before the game and pulling out the balls during, the week. I remember and vaguely, and I don't even know how it worked out, but I remember for whether it was playoffs or something, they would send you like 20 balls for the week. And I think they would use, 12 or 15 balls, whatever it was. And so I remember times when they would bring me in and say, okay, here's the balls that we have a chance to choose from the game. And they'd throw them to you, and you're like, okay, that one's good, that one's good, that one's good. And so you got to choose that to some degree. So those things happen. I think the big question here is, did they know what the rules were? And did they try to go beyond the rules to gain some kind of an advantage? That, to me, is the biggest question, And I don't know if the report fully tells us that and what the knowledge was of the people involved. And, and that's the hard part, because now everybody's going to judge through their own lens. And, I think it's unfair, on both sides of it, that we're going to make a judgment. And it could be fair or it could be unfair, and people are going to get judged, and it could be fair or it could be unfair. And that's, I guess, the disappointing part of it is we don't know the full truth in the story. It's pretty obvious that something went on, and something to try to go beyond or give an advantage. But we just don't know the full details of that, and that's the disappointing part, because it just leaves you to wonder or to speculate. And nobody at the end of the day wants to do that, especially when you're talking about guys' character.
But do you think it's odd that an official's locker room attendant is involved in the process of handling footballs other than to just take them out, right? That this guy is in text contact with the guy that is in contact with Brady? That, to me, was the most damning part of this whole thing, Kurt. That why is an official's locker room attendant even talking to the guy who's in charge of the of Brady's footballs? Is that odd, or is that normal in the NFL world?
Yeah, it seems odd. But again, I can only go off of my experience.
Sure.
And I don't know anything about any of that stuff. The balls were what they were throughout the week. Whatever we did to them or got to choose from them, that's what we did. By the time I was out of the facility on, Thursday or Friday afternoon, I never thought about a ball the rest of the time. I thought about what plays we were going to run and how I was going to execute them and getting myself prepared. That was nothing, on my mind. So how that whole process works, unfortunately, I can't tell anybody. I don't know, the details. Does it seem odd? Yeah. Are there a lot of things in the report that, that put flags up and make you wonder or even make you assume that, whether it was Tom knew something or they were doing something out? Yeah. There's all kinds of stuff there. But at the end of the day, the hardest part, like I said, is that it's still more speculation and circumstantial than really knowing what happened. And now judgments are going to be made, based on, trying to read between the lines and figure out what really did go on. And like I said, I think it's unfair to all parties. I think it's unfair. I wrote a piece for Sporting News yesterday, and I just seeing more and more this spirit of competition being stamped out for the win at all cost, or if you're not cheating, you're not trying mentality. And I saw it trickle down last weekend. My son played in a 12U, which is a 12 and under tournament. They got beat in the semifinals and handedly outplayed by this team. And we come to find out in the middle of the game that they have at least one 13-year-old kid playing on that team. And I don't think, we would have won that game regardless, because we played that team a number of times and we knew a number of the kids were same age as our kids. We wouldn't have won that game anyways. But, that's all speculation, because we know that they had somebody outside the rules. We came to find out that the other team that ended up playing them in the finals also had 13-year-olds on their team. So the two teams that played in the finals and one that walked away with a trophy we're playing illegally. And that to me is all of this stuff, from performance-enhancing drugs to, the different kind of cheating that we see at different levels, the scandals that we see, to, guys pushing the envelope at the professional level. The competitive spirit, the spirit of which is, I'm going to prepare and I'm going to be ready and I'm going to show up between those lines, and I have a chance to compete against my opponent and beat them. And at the end of the day, if I win, I graciously win with humility, knowing, hey, I put in the work and I performed better this day, and I walk away knowing that even with all this, tomorrow's not guaranteed we go back and do it again. And if you lose, you tip your hat to your opponent saying, you were better than me today for whatever reason, but it was all on equal playing field with everything the same. That, to me, is what's great about competition. And now starting to take all this stuff into question, all the way down to the level where my kids are playing, it disappoints you for what you believe sport is all about and what you've learned from sport. And that, to me, is the disappointing part, is we're seeing it more and more, and at the professional levels, doing things to try to gain an advantage over your opponent instead of just saying, let's be on equal footing, and whoever's best is best, and we shake hands and we tip our hats, and then we go about and try to do it again.
And what you did after you found out about your son's league is you called Ted Wells right away, right? That's the first thing you did, Kurt, right? Get a report done.
You have to sit down and try to explain it to your kids.
Sure.
And that's the hard part. That's the hard part of, Dad, why do they do that? Why is a coach doing that? Why are we trying to do things by the rules, and then everybody else is cheating, and we get punished for it at the end of the day? And that is the whole question. And then, that's an 11-year-old tournament where they get, a 12-inch trophy to come home. What about when we're talking about at the NFL level, when we're talking about legacies and we're talking about, fame, and we're talking about contracts, we're talking about all these kinds of things, that it's gotten out of control, and it just makes me wonder if we're ever going to be able to get back to what sports is really about.
Kurt.
And that's, hey, these are my rules. We're playing within them, and we'll see who wins at the end of the day.
Kurt, thanks for calling in. You're a bud, okay?
You
Thanks.
bet, buddy.
Appreciate it. Take care.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.